Okay. Welcome to the afternoon. This is the warm, kind of sleepy part of a day on a meditation retreat. If you've been to a big institution where they do meditation retreats, you're probably saying, "What is this? There's no schedule. He wasn't following the schedule. They weren't doing it. Where do we sit? How do we? Who's first in line? Like, what is this chaos?" And part of it is it's just my character type. I'm intrinsically kind of chaotic, so I could try to fake it, but it would just be an act. But the other part is, you see, I'm not trying to replicate anything in particular. What we're going through is actually the substance of a normal day in the life of a monastic. So the gradual training and monastic's day-to-day rhythm are exactly the same thing. Because the gradual training is for practice towards nibbana, towards liberation. And the monk's life is for practice towards nibbana, towards liberation. So what you see, all the form, all the ritual, all of the bed sheets, all of this is meant to just facilitate this practice. So instead of setting a really rigid schedule, I kind of left it open, but there was still a container. There was the container of like, well, you can't do anything. You can't leave the property. You can't go to Dunkin' Donuts. You can't, I wasn't checking on anybody, so nobody was like thumbing through YouTube videos during the whole session. You know, you kind of know, okay, there's this time and I'm a little sleepy, I'm digesting the meal, I'm kind of, but I'm getting my second wind. It'll come back any minute now. And that's okay. That's a normal day in the life. And so this whole, the way we're approaching this retreat is the way that some monastic teachers, approach it, is that to not set strong guidelines, but to be like, imagine you are, you're arriving at the monastery and the teacher is like, okay, well, in order to get to the goal, you'll need to do this, 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 and this. Okay, it's a self-study program. Here are all the resources, get to it. And I've been in that situation. I've been living this way over a decade, and there's no end to it per se. Like, you just get better at it. So the arahants, one was asked at one point, and it's like, what is all this for? What is this gradual training for? Well, he says, for nibbana. It's for liberation. He's like, well, what do the arahants do? Oh, well, they do sila, and they do sense restraint, and they do mindfulness and contentment. They do the exact same thing. But why? I thought it was for nibbana. I was like, well, it's also a pleasant abiding here and now. It's intrinsically wholesome. So what we've got is a sort of blueprint for a liberated lifestyle, a relaxed lifestyle. If we were to try to impose that with strict rules, it would be kind of, it wouldn't be a good mix. Yeah. So the rules are a bit looser, but the responsibility is still there, because that's what you'll have when you come out of the retreat. Is you'll have the personal responsibility, and virtually everybody finds that they come out of a retreat and there's a sort of out-breath. They flip on the music as loud as it'll go, and they put a frozen pizza in the oven, and they kick up their shoes, they take a bubble bath. And basically, they need to detox from all of that sitting. And that's always there too, because the retreat is kind of a little artificial. Yeah, you're trying a bit harder than you would normally. But the gradual training is that which, when you get used to it, it's quicker. Like you swing back to, okay, and you're looking at your calendar and you're like, so when's my next retreat? Oh, I've got some free time there in October. And that's what it's been like over the years, starting out. And every time I'd get into the retreat, it would be like compressing me. And be like, oh, it's so rigid, it's so narrow. And when we got out of retreat, it's, everybody is like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that was so great. Oh, it was so peaceful, so peaceful. And kind of let everything go again. But over the years, it's been more like, yeah, okay. I'd almost like to have a whole week of just, nice and level and normal and just like that, than I would 2 days of really intense retreat followed by 3 days of detox. Yeah. And so that's what I've aspired to. And that's what we're kind of aiming for. It's like if at 1 o'clock they ring the bell, but you feel like laying down in the shade, then you lay down in the shade as mindfully as you can. And you know what? That's what the Buddha did. That's what the Buddha did in the heat of the hot season in India. And people would be like, what are you doing, laying around when there's meditating to be done? Then he said, in the hot season, after I've eaten my meal, I lay down mindfully on one side. I set the intention to wake up when I'm rested. And when I'm rested, I get up. And that's the conduct of an arahant. You have your finger on the pulse, and you're not asking too much from your body or from your life or from your mind. And that's a compassionate way to approach training, yeah? Because you actually want to succeed. You're not trying to get a result. You're trying to get better. So I'm going to, I've already said a lot about sense restraint, but I'll say a little bit more, and then we can kind of open it up to crosstalk. Because sila, or morality, and sense restraint are, there's a lot of questions about these. Not as much about mindfulness. People kind of get that. Pay attention to what's going on. And contentment is like, that's already a cultural virtue. Everybody wishes they were content. They just want to know how much it costs. Yeah. But sila and sense restraint are something a little different. They're kind of, it's not the norm, for people to follow precepts or have an imposition, like, oh, I can't kill whoever I want. That's not fair. That doesn't sound like freedom to me. But we're going for a different definition of freedom. It's freedom from suffering. And so that's what's being suggested. And then it gets even murkier when you get into the realm of sensuality, the realm of indulgence. And it gets murkier because this isn't necessarily immoral. It's so mundane. It's so commonplace. It is hard to see why we should give it up in the first place. Enjoyable things. I don't want to. What are you talking about? Crazy shaven-headed monk. But it's not. It turns out it's not the question of like, is it bad to have enjoyable things? It's a question of what works. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to train the mind. So this isn't. This is where we kind of transitioned. You see, we started out with sila. It's like, okay, these are the precepts. This is the container. And right about the mealtime, we're looking. It's like, okay, well, how do you be blameless? Yeah. Even when you're doing something you don't have to do. Well, you still get the food. It's still delicious, but it's alms food. It was given to you. Yeah? You didn't have to, you didn't have to take, you didn't have to choose, you didn't have to have preferences. It was just all laid out, and you just filled your bowl, and you went off, and you tried not to indulge. And now we're getting to sense restraint, and it's where we enter into this idea of, okay, so the mind is a conditioned phenomena, which means the things that we point our senses at will build our mind. So it's a choice we get to make. If we point our mind at the things that make us angry, we're going to get an angry mind. But we didn't have to point our mind at the things that make us angry. This is something I've been saying a lot over, the presidential elections for the last couple of cycles. And yet it's hard, because there actually is a little bit of pleasure in being angry. It's easy for people to think about letting go of things they dislike. But if something is pleasurable, it's very hard to let go. And so sense restraint is not saying we've got to close off our senses. It's saying we can choose. We can choose what we direct them at. Now, we can't choose what we're exposed to necessarily. Like there was piano going in the other room. And, the first day that you're here, you're like, we're trying to do a meditation retreat. How I can't believe it's coming through the walls and there's nothing to do about it. But like the 10th day that you've been here, you'd be like, oh, it's the same song every day. That's no big deal. She's just going through her scales. She's a musician. She's a piano teacher. So it becomes harmless. It becomes part of the background. So this isn't about like music is bad and we've got to cut it off. This isn't about movies are bad, we have to cut them off. Because if that was the case, I've got to say, I only know of a bare handful of enlightened beings that don't watch movies here and there, which I don't know is a shock. But like, once you get to a certain point and it won't have any impact on the mind, you don't care if it's playing or not. Somebody's like, oh, have you seen this? And I'm like, there we are again. It's the same old story. It's not attractive, but it's also not repulsive. And that's what sense restraint is like. Noticing we can kind of keep tabs on our mind. And when we feel something kind of pushing or pulling, we can be careful. But when we don't, then we can actually just expand. We can relax. It's this sort of blameless peace. It's like, oh, okay. There's no indulgence here. This is as calm as it can get. Yeah. And that's an extra level of peace. And so sense restraint is happening somewhere between sila, which is just very basic, like how do you live your life, and mindfulness, which everybody understands is something you got to cultivate. You got to know what you're doing from moment to moment. Somewhere in between, sense restraint is not quite knowing what you're doing from moment to moment, but it's being sensitive, just like you are with your precepts, towards dangerous situations. You know what will get you thinking about something for a long time. And you start, just gradually avoiding those situations. When you're on retreat, you kind of narrow it down because you do have a choice. The results will be that your mind will be more relaxed and more under control, because you won't have anything that's pulling at you. I don't know if anybody's ever been in a room with like children's programming going on. I imagine you probably all have. It's really hard not to pay attention, right? Bright colors and bouncy characters and jingles. Like, I had nephews, and I'd go and visit, and even no matter how much I was trying to be a strong practitioner, this stuff is designed to catch your eye. And so I was caught in this dichotomy. It was like, if I'm in the room, my mind is going to be like, my eyes are going to be stuck on the screen, and I just couldn't do anything about it. And that's our situation. It's like some things are kind of instinctive, they're programmed in. So when we can avoid those situations, we do avoid those situations. And when we can't avoid those situations, we're looking for just certain benchmarks. Like we were going to put something on a TV, then what's the content? And this is the thing. There is entertainment that is sort of informative, or sort of, at the very least, it's not harmful. And then there's entertainment that's all about breaking the precepts. So people killing each other, extorting money, cheating on their partners, and you should just cut it off. Yeah, because what's it going to lead to thinking about? The things that we're trying not to do, the things that we don't want to be exposed to because they just disturb the mind so much. And likewise with something like, news or politics, we can be informed without being upset. Yeah, we can gauge the mind, wait till we're prepared, and then look for information intentionally, like what's going on in this one country, like did so-and-so win that election, and try to get past all the commentary, try to get past all the Facebook and Reddit kind of chatter that will just make us upset. Yeah, because that's what we're going for at the end of the day, is balance, calm. And it's not something where we go through the day and we've just been getting bashed around, and then we sit down on the cushion. It's like, and all of everything comes back to us. No, we need to get momentum. Yeah. If mindfulness is going to arise, it's because the mind, the senses, we've already been paying attention to what we're exposed to. We've already been kind of cutting out the stuff that leads to mental chatter. And if we do this over and over and over again, it's very interesting that the impact that those things have gets less and less and less. So remember when I started out as a monastic, it was Anagarika Karl, and I was let loose in the monastery kitchen. It didn't last long, by the way. There was a lot of work to do. So I showed up because I wanted to be free. I wanted to practice for Nibbana. And they're like, okay, here's a shovel, dig some trenches. Here's a spatula, cook for 30 people, go. And sometimes the monastic life is just like lay life. There are busy periods that it can't be avoided. There are chores to be done. Yeah. But when you've come into this environment, you come into this training again and again and again and again, this is a busy period, and there's going to be a not busy period that follows it. And so as you get through the busyness, you're pacing yourself. And every now and then, you just lay down with your head on your zafu, and you just take 5 minutes of breathing to kind of center yourself. And then you go back to it. You're keeping tabs on the mind. Sense restraint becomes a default. Yeah, there's always some of it there. And when this fully matures, those beings I've seen that have mastered meditation, they do all the same stuff that everybody else does. But there's just something about their presence. You realize their awareness is not leaving their skin. It's not going any further than their own body. And you wouldn't necessarily call it that they're being mindful in every moment, but their consciousness is there. It's fully immersed in the body. And so if they want to be cultivating mindfulness, it's just a decision, because the mind hasn't been going out, it hasn't been roaming, it hasn't been wild. They've kept tabs on it the whole time, even when they had all sorts of stuff going on. And it's quite quirky that the more enlightened you get, the more you tend to be surrounded by people just all the time. You don't get to be more a hermit. It's the complete opposite. People seek you out because they want to know what it is you've found that's making you so peaceful all the time. And you just get better and better being peaceful as there's more and more chaos around you. But it's all done through sense restraint, through control. Yeah. And these practitioners I've seen, they can get meditation in the space of a single in and out breath. They can go into absorption, into deep samadhi. And, it's like, well, I really want to get there. But I've seen it over the years. It's through living this way and developing a taste for living this way. And it doesn't have to happen overnight, but here and there you find little ways to kind of adjust. Yeah, so that you're not thrown off balance. You're thrown off balance less and less until finally you get through a day and you were just there for the whole thing. Not necessarily spectacular mind states. If it's raining or it's hot or there are bugs or there's duties, you might just be plodding through. But when you get to the other side, you'll have all of your faculties with you because you kept them in check. You stayed with them. Okay, so these are some thoughts. And now this is your opportunity to talk it over. So those are my thoughts about sila and sense restraint. But something I tend to do when I'm out wandering, which is kind of invisible to all of you, I've shown up at your houses or at meditation groups that you're at. It always seems like I've got some really interesting reflection on what you're talking about, right? Well, I don't. The thing is, I was just at your neighbor's house talking about that thing. And so as we talked about it, they had some really good ideas. And then I show up at your house and I've got my really good ideas and their really good ideas. And then we talk about it. And then I've got your really good ideas. And then I go to someone else's house and I got their really good ideas. So you're allowed to, you're not stuck with just your understanding, just your brain power. Like you can crowdsource, yeah? You can kind of brainstorm, get everybody's ideas on the table and see what really resonates. Maybe the teacher's ideas don't really resonate, but you have a conversation with the person sitting next to you, you realize they're working with the exact same thing that you are. So